Welcome, darlings. My name is 42, and today is the finale of our Halloween week. Today, I'm joined by many other narrators who bring their own stories to the table to be told. And we even have something special that 242 herself wrote. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So, turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Don't let those ghouls, zombies, or ghosties in this evening, 'cause things are about to get spooky for a Halloween night. He took a particularly sadistic joy in driving drunk, and he sneered as he sped past a memorial for a child he hit the year prior. After they extracted his body from the car and brought him to the morgue, the coroner noted how much the bruise on his right foot looked like a child's hand. What is Your Fear? By 242. Narrated by 242 Reads and Limited Stories. What is your worst fear? What would you do to get over it? These are the words at the top of the site from a link my friend sent me. I raised my eyebrow as I looked it over and laughed a little to myself. Halloween was tomorrow, and I was sure Sam was just trying to give me a little chill. I read on. Maybe you fear heights and would give your left kidney to get over it. Just the thought of stepping on a ladder makes you break in a cold sweat. How about being buried under 6 feet of ground? Make you lose your breath at the thought? What would you give to get out of such a fear? Tell us down below what you're scared of and what you give to get over it. NoMoreFear.com has your fear in the bag. There was a box down below that I could type into. I laughed a little as I looked at the flashing cursor in the box. Like it was teasing me to write something, anything. I thought about it. What was my worst fear? What would make me break into a chill at the mere thought of it? I rested my hand on my keyboard, watching the flashing on the screen for a moment before I started to type, being truthful. I fear most being locked in a room with no way out. Under what I typed was the question, what would you give up for it? I had to think long and hard about it. I laughed as I typed my friendship with my best friend. I just couldn't think of anything better. I mean, I could have put one of my kidneys, but that seemed too easy to me. So I wanted to go with something odd. I shook my head and closed the site before getting up and heading to bed. The next day was Halloween, and my parents were heading to a party that night. Since I didn't drink or anything, I said I would give out the candy for the kids. I won't lie, I love seeing the kids having fun in their costumes. I sat down to watch a horror movie as I waited for the kids to come to the door. Near 9 p.m., I was about to turn off the lights. The candy was low. No, I didn't eat any. Okay, I had some. And I needed to head to bed to get up early tomorrow to hang out with Sam for our breakfast sundae. When I got up, I heard a knock at the door. I sighed and grabbed the bowl of candy, seeing 5 pieces left. Did I really eat so much? I thought as I looked at the small pile of wrappers next to where I was sitting. Oops, I thought as I headed to the door, hoping for only a kid or two. With a small creak, my door opened, and I looked out to see, but not seeing a cute kid in a costume, but a full-grown man. He was covered in black from head to toe. Before I could slam the door closed, he put his foot in the way and then pushed his way in with ease. The candy bowl went flying as I turned around to run, but before me stood another man in all black like the man at the door. Before I could even scream, my mouth was covered and the door behind me was closed as I heard the click of the light for outside turn off. Tears ran down my face as I tried to pull away, but of course the guy behind me grabbed my hands, and so were my feet before I could really think. I only remembered darkness after that. They must have knocked me out somehow. My next memory was waking up in a room. It only had one light above, with that dangling chain to turn it off and on. I was laying on a bed, a very old and dirty one, but a bed. Inside the room was a small desk with paper and pen. I rubbed my throbbing head as I walked over to it. On top was written, "Welcome, Sarah, to your greatest fear. We know you're about to panic, but please remember to breathe. There's no way out of this room. We hope you enjoy your greatest fear, brought to you by NoMoreFear.com." I stared at the note for a moment before I looked around. The window was boarded up, no light able to get in. I walked over to the window and tried to open it, and it was even nailed down. I moved to the door next and tried to open it, and the knob wouldn't turn. One knock on the door and I knew that it was a solid door, not a hollow one. A cold sweat started to cover my body as I sat down on the ground. I started to feel my breath leaving me as I felt my heart racing. No, I had not lied about this fear. I was stuck in this room with no way out. Time started to race and slow at the same time. I closed my eyes as I tried to focus on my breathing. Focus on something else, I told myself, trying to make my mind work on anything else. 1, 2, I'm stuck in a room. 4, 5, help me someone. 6, 7, 8, I'm going to die here. 10, 11, why is this 12, happening? 13, 14, 15, wait, NoMoreFear.com? I got to my feet and headed to the table, looking at the note again. The words of that website with my name on this paper. How did the website track me? How did they know it was me? How could this be a thing, and what could they get out of this? This can't be a real thing, can it? I felt an anger boil deep inside me. I started to throw everything. The desk, the bed. I couldn't think straight. I'd been set up. I fell to my knees and screamed loudly in pure anger. When I started to calm down, I looked at the wall behind the desk, and there was some light. I tilted my head. There was a door. It was very small, enough for someone to crawl through. I pushed the door open, and it creaked open slowly. It was a small tunnel. It was a way out of this place, but it could be a trap as well. I shook my head and started to crawl through it. There was a light at the end, but it was hard to make out what it was before me. It was blindingly bright. I heard the door behind me close and clicked. I swallowed hard, but kept going forward. Each move forward was slow and careful. I looked down at the ground to not look at the light. I kept my mind on counting to keep calm. 1, 2, 3. Forward slowly, one hand, then leg. 4, 5, 6. I could hear dirt moving. The air was musty, but I didn't let myself think about it. 7, 8, 9. I got to the light and could see I could turn to the right, away from it. 10, 11, 12. I moved down the path till I reached another door that pushed open for me. I got up and rubbed the dust out of my eyes. That's when I saw 5 people in all black clothes, each one standing and looking at me. 2 grabbed me before I could run or move. "Let me go, you sick fucks!" I yelled. One removed his mask, and I looked at Sam in shock. He was my friend the longest out of all the people I knew.
"You passed the test, Sarah,"
he said with a smile.
"Shame we had to miss our breakfast for this, but how do you feel?"
"How do I feel? Like shit, you son of a—"
"Now, Sarah,"
he said, cutting me off.
Do you really think that's the way to talk to your best friend? Oh wait, your price was me, wasn't it?
That had been my joke price. I couldn't think of what to say.
Don't worry, if you join us to free others from their fears, you need not to pay your price.
He smiled as he walked close to me. I was about to yell hell no, but then I thought about it. The thought of tight rooms or locks in a room no longer made me scared. I had faced my fear. Who's the next target? I asked Sam, who smiled wider.
That's what I was hoping to hear. Come on, we need to do some work.
I smiled, but felt cold inside. If I could keep my best friend and help people overcome their own worst fear, I might have no choice but to join them. I was touched when my ailing grandmother said, "I will always watch over you from above," before succumbing to her illness. Now, at night, I sleep sideways just to avert her gaze. Joe and Pop's Coffee Shop. Written and narrated by PA Nightmares.
Joe sat on the couch, watching the commercial with his father. They had filmed the commercial using the remainder of their excess spending money. Finances had been tight. They needed to try to drum up some extra business at the coffee shop. The TV played in the background. "Come to Joe and Pop's Coffee Shop, where we do coffee right. All of our own blends are crafted on site. Your taste buds will not be disappointed. We are starting our pumpkin spice blend tomorrow, and the first 500 customers get a 50% off discount. See you then." Right after the commercial was over, the phone rang. It was Pop's vendor. He called with some bad news. "Hey, Pops, due to the pandemic, I can't get you the ingredients you need for your pumpkin spice latte. I'm sorry, man, but if you want, I can get you in touch with a friend of mine that can get you what you need." So his vendor gave Pops the number and the name of his contact, and Pops called him immediately following the conversation. "Hello?" A gruff voice answered after a few rings. "Who are you, and how'd you get this number?" "Hi, Tyler. You can call me Pops. Mark told you I was calling. He said you can get me the ingredients I need for my home blend of pumpkin spice." Pop finished, hoping on all hope that he would get the answer he wanted. "Oh yeah, he did mention that. Yes, I can get you what you need for a price, of course." He finished with a chuckle. "Of course. How does 500 sound? I mean, I can't afford much currently, but I can pay you more later down the road." Pops finished. He was worried he might not be able to pay the man enough. "You know what, Pops? Normally, I charge far more, but I like you. You sound like good people. I'll have you stuffed to you by 6 a.m. tomorrow." Pops finished by thanking the man and hung up the phone. Pops looked at his son and spoke. "Well, Joe, it's time to head to bed. Hopefully, we will have a very busy day tomorrow." Joe got up and headed towards his room, with Pops close behind. The next morning, Pops and Joe were at the coffee shop at 5 a.m., ready to get the coffee blended, brewed, and ready to serve before 9 a.m. rolled around and the doors opened up. They got all the ingredients ready. He had cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, cloves, allspice, and yes, that very special ingredient that made Pop's pumpkin spice the best in the county. Many have asked him what it was, but he would never tell. Joe wasn't even privy to it just yet. By the time 9 a.m. rolled around, there was a line from the front door practically wrapping around the entire building. I guess the commercial did the trick, Pops thought to himself. The second the doors opened up, excited patrons flew into the shop. Pops had even thought of clever names for the size of drinks, just for fun. A customer walked to the counter. "Hi, Pops. Can I get a baby spice latte for the missus and a king pumpkin for myself?" he said. The coffee flew off the shelf, and before he knew it, he had sold over 100 cups of coffee, then 2, then 5. Everyone in the town must have shown up for his coffee. This brought a smile to Pop's face, until the first customer dropped to the ground, foaming at the mouth. Joe, being the kind soul he was, ran over to the patron and checked on him. Before Pops knew what was happening, more and more patrons dropped to the ground. The first one had stopped convulsing. Pops was on the phone dialing 911 when he heard the scream. He looked over and saw the first man on top of Joe, biting his face. Blood was everywhere. Pops was frantically shouting at the 911 operator that the patrons were attacking his son. As this was happening, others stood up, shambling towards Pops. He had a choice to make. Should he grab a shotgun and defend himself and possibly help his boy, but hurting innocent people in the process? Or go back into the back and hunker down? Before he could make the choice, it was made for him. His boy stopped screaming, lying there still, not breathing. Pops ran into the back, barricading the door. After what felt like an eternity, he heard the police sirens. The officers could be heard shouting at the patrons, but soon enough, he heard gunfire. Then, it was absolutely quiet. Pop slowly exited the back to see his son's body, and the bodies of the few patrons that had not drunk the pumpkin spice lattes. He exited the shop, and was shocked to find the officers dead. They had killed some of the patrons that attacked them. Unsure of what to do, he went searching for anyone that might still be alive. The town looked abandoned. Pops did not want to call them zombies, but they shambled around and ate people. What else could he call them? He finally came to a church. It was an old stone building that'd make for a great shelter. He knocked on the front door, but received no answer. So he opened the door, and there stood one man, the pastor. "Oh, thank God, Pastor, you're still alive." However, as he drew closer, he noticed the pastor had turned. The pastor attacked him and Pops killed him. The situation and the grief overwhelmed him as he heard the horde approaching. So, as one last act of defiance, he cocked the shotgun and made his death swift.
The flooding in my dad's basement was becoming an issue. But when I found that second basement is when the nightmare truly began. Are You Afraid of Death? By ScareTheater. Narrated by As the Raven Dreams.
Death. The end of the life of a person or organism. Death is unique in that everyone perceives it differently. Some of us see death as something that is beautiful, something that should be cherished. Some of us, however, are afraid to die. The state of no longer existing is incomprehensible and terrifying. Maybe this is why religion was created. To give sufferers of thanatophobia hope that they can live on even after they die. Are you afraid of death? Harry was. Harry was raised in a Christian family, and although he still had faith in his religion, he had doubts from time to time. Seeing all the chaos going on in the world made him question the righteousness and existence of God. That little girl on the news last night was kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered. How could such a God allow that to happen? Was that little girl now rejoicing in heaven, or has she simply vanished from existence? These were the types of thoughts that crossed his mind almost daily. And then he found his answer. One day, while walking home from school, Harry was waiting to cross the street. When the little symbol of the pedestrian lit up on the traffic light, he began walking. As he was nearly midway across the street, a reckless driver sped through the red light and made a beeline straight towards Harry. Harry turned his head just in time to notice the car's headlights were turned on, and then Harry was turned off. Sort of. As the car collided with Harry, His body flew up into the air and smashed right into the ground. He felt his bones everywhere cracking, and he wanted to let out a deafening scream, but he couldn't. As his skull cracked open and blood began pouring out of his head like a waterfall, the only thing he could think about was screaming to alleviate the excruciating pain, but his mouth was frozen. In fact, his entire body was frozen. His eyes, which were still open, would not shut. His heart stopped beating, and he was no longer breathing. It was as if each of his organs were paralyzed. Yet somehow, he was still able to perceive things. He was beyond terrified. "Oh shit! Oh shit!" the driver said as he ran from his car towards Harry's limp body. Harry, still limp on the ground, listened to the driver calling the police. "Hello? Yeah. I just hit someone with my car. No, it was an accident. I don't know. I think he's dead." Harry listened to the driver's entire conversation with the police. They kept him on the phone until the police finally arrived. There was a medical examiner with them that checked Harry's pulse and told the officers that he was dead. The driver began crying, and Harry wanted to cry much more, but clearly he could not. One of the police officers closed Harry's eyes, now limiting one of his senses. He was now in the dark, and was filled with an even greater sense of dread as he felt his body being lifted up and taken away. Several weeks went by, and he really didn't know where he was, until, eventually, the day of his funeral came. He felt himself being placed into a casket, and heard all of the preparations of the funeral, hours before it actually began. From the way things sounded, it was an open casket. As time passed, more people congregated into the church where the funeral was taking place. He heard people go up and speak about how great of a person he was, and how much shame it was that his life had been cut so short. The most difficult part for Harry was how uncontrollably his mother was crying. She would try to hold it in, but her wails would break through the silence she so vigorously tried to create. When she came up to look into the casket, she completely lost it as she broke into tears. If there was something that Harry wanted more than anything at this time, it was to be able to open his eyes and see his mother one last time. The funeral ended, and Harry heard his casket shut. He felt himself being carried to his burial plot and being lowered into the ground. He had definitely experienced a lot of terrifying things in his life, but nothing could compare to this. Being buried alive? Well, no, dead, actually. It was making him agonizingly claustrophobic. There was no relief from this anguish, yet the years passed anyway. As the time went on, things only got more and more difficult. He had no way of telling what time it was, whether anyone was walking above him, or really anything at all for that matter. He just felt bitterly cold. It wasn't long before the bugs were able to make their way into the casket as well. The bugs hardly even bothered him as they crawled up and down his body, into what was left of his decaying skin. He sometimes tried to escape reality by thinking of past events in his life, but the state that he was in proved inescapable, even temporarily. Harry was truly doomed to a terrible fate for eternity. He had lost all faith. Trust me, death is not the end, but you will wish it was.
I was born blind, but was lucky enough to have a loving mother who took care of my every need. Imagine the betrayal I felt when a stitch slipped and a ray of light hit my eye for the first time.
The Blood Curse. Written and narrated by Lady Spookaria. My family made a dark pact with a demon centuries ago. We were at war with a rival family for the throne, and things were getting desperate. We had lost most of the battles and a lot of our territory. Nearly all of the potential heirs had perished or were maimed to a point where they could not be king. Most of our allies had gone to the opposite side. Our few remaining allies told us it was time to give up. Our time had come to an end, and to accept it. We were fighting a lost cause. Perhaps we would have been offered clemency, even a decent rank if we relented. Otherwise, our days were numbered. I sincerely believe they didn't think they would have survived without the pledge. Maybe the family would have been purged if they didn't. Or they could have found a way to escape, even thrive. Who knows what would have actually happened? It is said the pact was made in the ruins of a desecrated church. It was our church. My family paid to have it built, my ancestors' ancestors, and they took great pain to make it beautiful to behold. A sign of our undying faith and devotion. At one time, anyway. The family coat of arms was broken. It lay on the floor in pieces and was soiled on by the foe. The rival family had herded peasants inside and they burnt it to the ground. The people were burned alive. It is said that even now, their haunted screams can be heard by anyone and everyone who goes near it. They wander around the site, angry and in terrible pain. A sacred place forever corrupt and tainted. The church was never rebuilt and the site remains in ruins. Every time a developer tries to build on the site, there are always deaths and a lot of accidents that occur. The plans are always abandoned until it's forgotten completely. When they entered, they found the place had been destroyed. The aroma of burning flesh and rotting corpses both urged them to act, and as a warning, the two remaining brothers bickered between themselves, one in favor and one against it. They decided to leave it to a game of chance. They drew sticks to decide what they would do. 3 times fate was in favor of the summoning, as though there was no other option for them. It is unknown which rite they used. The demon was raised from the abyss, and they crudely bargained with the trickster, who knew which buttons to press. It used their anger, pain, desperation, and they made a terrible deal. They would get what they desired, but nothing ever came for free. The exact location where the rite took place is haunted, cursed, and no animals go there. No plants grow in that area. It is completely barren. No one in my family has visited the place in over 100 years. The last person, a distant aunt, died after tearing her own eyes and hair from her head. Her screams were now part of the symphony of death. I heard that she now acts as a grim herald of woe. Her whispers warn the elders of my family about what is going to come, what danger they need to prepare for. The debt wasn't the brothers only, it passed to their children, and to their children's children. Even if someone married into another family, the curse would follow them. Even when we are far from the cursed ground, the wicked pact follows us wherever we go. Always passed down through families. And even when my ancestors traveled away to distant lands in search of a cure, a spell, anything or anyone that could help us, it followed us. No shaman's words, exorcisms, prayers, anything, nothing worked to remove it. Each time they were powerless, and the demon would claim what was owed. It wasn't the only thing to be riddled with death. Our bodies and those close to us always suffer. Our homes soon fall to decay. Businesses regularly go bankrupt. And we often become outsiders wherever we go. Our pets always end up dying, and we have black thumbs, so our gardens always look terrible. All plants we own die. Nothing ever grows. Death follows us wherever we go. But anyway, the ritual was made and the demon had been summoned. I don't even know the name of the demon. No one does. I guess they didn't think about what the cost would be to their entire bloodline. When they summoned him and they asked for victory, they got it. One of the brothers was placed on the throne, but it didn't take long before sterility took hold. My family produces plenty of daughters, but few sons. If they did, the sons were never quite right. Their minds were always cruel and twisted, as though the demon's soul resided in them and mocked them for their choice their ancestor had made. In the past, it was devastating to family fortunes. We have also been riddled with sickness, infertility, murder, unhappy marriages, disgrace. The other brother, angry for being passed over, was furious and soon. It was brother against brother. Both sides of the family clashed, and sins against family were committed time and time again. We lost the throne we made the bargain for to begin with. So, all the suffering that followed was for nothing. Another family rose, and was surprisingly merciful to the remnants of my family. They lost their status but didn't lose their lives. The remaining sides of the family married into each other, and never did the family ever rise to former prominence. They did all they could to restore what was left of the family fortune. There were whispers about the family being off, tainted with madness and depravity. They weren't wrong. The demon still collected the suffering of the family. The issues continued, and we weren't able to hold it back anymore. Every decade, in order to reduce the impact of the curse on all the members of the family, all the suffering is focused on one person. The pain of one person to ease the suffering of all. Someone gets sacrificed, and everyone in the family is forced to watch and participate. The harm done to those who participate is lessened each time it happens. It is at a point now that no one in the family has ever been destitute. Our businesses tend to do okay. Never great, but they don't sink anymore. Perhaps a life of mediocrity is part of the demon's great plan for us. As you can imagine, family gatherings are never pleasant. When my friends ask why I don't like my family, it is difficult to tell them why. I can't tell them. I just tell them that they're weird or that they make me uncomfortable. Neither is a lie. It isn't easy speaking to people who would do that to you, or someone you were close to, or who would take pleasure in it. We have to keep up appearances and spend time with each other. All the family gatherings have tasty food, gifts, and fake insincere smiles. Every time I see them, all I can think of is, who will be next? How many of them would delight if it was me or one of my siblings rather than their own children? The way we decide who eventually dies is, apparently, a name is pulled out of a hat by a council of elders. or whispers from the ghost of the distant aunt. One of my cousins told me they go by the least favored child, something the child has done to make people angry or hostile in some way. The one who is least likely to achieve anything in life. How it is decided makes zero difference because in the end, it doesn't matter. My name was drawn. I am doomed to die. I am not innocent. I have done this since I was a child. I willingly joined in with the bloody rite. Each time I focused on what needed to be done. It was a task that had to be completed. Something we had to do, not something we wanted to do. I didn't care about the pain of my extended family members. It is normal for us. Many family members tend to resort to an outside means as a method to cope. We can go to no one for help. It is a secret. Each of us caught up in our own personal hell. It is as normal as any other family tradition. Even though I knew there was a chance, I never believed my name would be finally written in blood on the household door. There were no warning signs that something was coming. No haunted whispers. Nothing that I could foresee what was going to come. It wouldn't have mattered if it did. Can I run? Well, I don't think I would get far. And I know what will happen to my family if the ritual doesn't happen. All the suffering would return. Perhaps the demon would be angry at them. I don't know. Either way, who can I go to without incriminating myself in the process? So, I have to endure all of it. I will be taken deep into the woods. So deep that no one ever goes out that far. Away from any prying eyes or help that could rescue me. We would walk through the forest for days until we reached our destination. There is no mistake it will be me who will be sacrificed. I will wear a coarse red gown with a red dot on the front and back. The rest of the family will be cloaked and masked. Their faces hidden from view. I will be able to tell who each person is though. Perhaps the masks are to keep people anonymous, just in case we were caught by some good Samaritan. The skulls of previous family members who have been sacrificed will surround me in a circle. It is said they whisper things. Sometimes encouragement, other times threats, and perhaps even deranged babbling. A pattern is painted on the floor using the blood of the previous victim. Offers of food, gold, and other valuables are placed around in a circle, as much as the family as the collective can afford. The demon does not tolerate cheap or shabby offerings. And from what I know, there is no specific time during the night it is done. The elders chant some strange words, and the hourglass begins. This is always when it is the most awkward. Sometimes people would beg and scream. Others would try to run. But some just simply accept their fate. The family, everyone, from the elders to the children will be there to witness, and slice or pierce my body. If you are old enough to hold a pen, you are old enough to join in on the rite. I will slowly be skinned alive. If I'm not alive throughout, then the process won't work. My blood will be drained for the next ritual. Slowly, each of my organs will be pierced. Enough to drain me of life, but not to kill me. Never to actually kill me. My body will be slowly roasted. All to prolong life, and cause as much suffering for as long as possible. If I'm in pain, then the demon will see it, feel it, and not spread the suffering to my other family members. Or maybe it will lessen the toll they experience. Once that is complete, and if it is done correctly, I will still be alive. And my family will tear pieces of flesh from my living body, and they They will consume it. The last thing I will see is my family devouring me. I don't want to die. I don't want to die like this. They're here. For me.
I was about to call the police on my neighbors because they kept flickering the lights on and off. But then I realized they were spelling SOS in Morse code.
This story is entitled The Shadow Man, written by Phoenix Fire. This story is also loosely based off true events. Darkness. Pitch black, ice-cold darkness. I have seen it now for quite some time. That night was the first time since I woke up that I realized that my room was freezing cold and darker than normal. I rolled onto my back and looked around in confusion. It was so damn dark. So pitch black dark. But I could see. It was all so clear. I looked around, still groggy from my sleep aid. There was a cabinet, a queen-sized wooden bed with a wooden nightstand next to it, a dresser with a mirror attached, and a small chair in the corner of the room. All of it felt unusual, yet so familiar. Out of nowhere, there he sat, the Shadow Man. I could see him sitting in the small chair in the corner of the room towards the foot of the bed. He opened his eyes and stared at me. He had short black hair and a pale face. He wore a black coat with a red collar and a black shirt underneath. He looked at me with luminous, penetrating red eyes and growled,
"Hello there. Would you like to leave?"
I froze. What did he say? Did he just ask if I wanted to leave? I remained quiet. He stood up and walked toward me. I was petrified. The fear held me prisoner under the covers as he approached me. Panic struck me like a bolt of lightning as my heart began to race. It felt like it was going to beat right out of my chest.
"If you would like to leave, speak now,"
he blustered in a baritone, hair-raising, cadaverous voice. Whatever he was, it wasn't human. "Who the fuck are you? What do you want from me?" I managed to stammer out. My breathing became labored. I was sweating so much I felt glued between the blanket and the mattress. An evil grin uncoiled across his pale face as his eyes narrowed into slits. He let out a low growl that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand at end. Long, blood-stained, razor-sharp teeth spilled over his black lips.
"Do you want to leave?"
he boomed. His voice echoed through the room so garishly, the walls shook. I was trembling so bad I felt like I was going to piss myself. The covers were going to pulverize my ribs at any moment now, it seemed. "Yes, I want to leave. Let me out of here," I finally screamed. My head began to dizzy, and I felt like I was going to pass out. My heart felt like it was going to burst. He ripped the covers back, grabbed my ankle, and dragged me out of bed. I was completely stiff with fear. Every muscle felt paralyzed. I could do nothing but helplessly watch from within my own body. My body hit the wall as my head thudded like a rock against the floor. The force of which I was being dragged Fear the friction burned right into my back. Why couldn't I move? My vision was blurred from the sweat and tears in my eyes. Rattling. I think I hear rattling. The ringing in my ears was so loud it was hard to determine what was happening. I think he was opening a strange door that I didn't recognize. I felt a rush of bitterly cold air sweep over me, and I was yanked even harder through a doorway.
You wanted to leave. Now's your chance. I will give you until the count of 3. Get up and run.
My body slammed into the ground, knocking the air out of me as he let me go. His footsteps were loud and heavy as he sauntered away from me, back into my apartment. I couldn't sit upright. My body was still paralyzed as I gasped for air. I looked up through blurred, teary vision and saw his shadow creeping back toward me. I arched my neck backward so I could peer behind me. A cloud of pitch-black darkness quickly washed over me. I faintly heard him growling.
1, 2.
I felt myself slip from consciousness. Flashing lights. Bright, flashing lights. My head pounded and the deafening ring in my ears began to subside as I finally came to. Whoa, take it easy. Just lay still and try not to take it too fast, came a voice that I didn't recognize. What? Where am I? I asked. You're laying outside your front door. We heard screams and loud banging. It woke us up and we came over to see if you were okay. How did you end up out here? Is everything all right? As my vision finally focused, I recognized the voice talking to me. My neighbors were standing over me with flashlights. A look of fear and concern stamped their faces. Is he gone? Did you see him? I said as I slowly sat up and held my throbbing head. See who? There's no one here but you. You're soaking wet and it's freezing out here. Do you need to go to the hospital? My neighbors asked. The tall, pale man with red eyes, he was just here, I grunted. The feeling in my body came rushing back as I began moving my legs to stand up. Tall man with red eyes? What are you talking about? There's no one here but you and us. Are you sure you're okay? Maybe we should call the police. No, I'm fine. I must have hit my head a little too hard. I'll be okay. Thank you for coming over and checking on me. I'll take it from here. The neighbors helped me to my feet, and I told them goodnight as they ushered me back into my apartment. I turned the lights on and saw wet streaks along the floor that trailed through the hallway. I limped back to my bedroom and noticed the bedding crumpled on the floor. I plucked the pillows and blankets from the floor and made my bed. I sat on the edge of my bed trying to recollect what happened. My head was throbbing so bad, all I wanted to do was get some rest. I lay down and instantly slipped back into slumber. As I awoke the next morning, a sharp pain shot through my back. What in the hell happened last night? I felt like I had been beaten down with a sack of bricks. I shook the fogginess from my head and started my day. That evening, when I returned home, I took one of my trazodone so that I could get a peaceful night's rest. The sleep drug rapidly set in and I finally drifted off. Sometime during the night, I rolled over onto my back. I felt an ice-cold breeze sweep over me. My eyes shot open to an eerie, pitch-black darkness. I began to panic. From the foot of my bed, I heard a deep, sinister voice snarl.
Would you like to leave?
I looked into my bathroom, terrified to see one dead body in it. I could have sworn there was 2 yesterday. Scary Halloween Night by Anonymoose, narrated by Silver Underworld, with a few special guests from the Underworld.
This story takes place in 2015. When I was a freshman in high school, I lived in a middle-class neighborhood with some friends that live here as well. I have one friend that lives in a high-life society in a neighborhood near mine. It's weird how there's $2 million houses nearby $200,000 homes. Anyways, my name is Jorge, and my friends' names are Ryan and Chris. Chris is the one that lives in the high-life society. It's nighttime on October 30. We were all in a group text talking about what we should do on Halloween night. I recently checked my phone for this story, so here's what we basically said.
Guys, I have an idea. Let's go in the woods.
Yo, fuck that. I bet I'm gonna see some creepy kids wearing costumes roaming around.
Oh, don't be scared. I'll protect you.
Fuck you, Chris.
Okay, how about we just build a campfire and just chill in the woods?
How about we go drink in the woods?
Where are we gonna get beer?
My dad has like 2 cans of Modelo. I can let you guys have at it.
Nah, fuck that noise. I'll get us some beer.
How?
My dad is having this stupid Halloween party, and he has a shit ton of beer. I'll get some and meet you 2 at the entrance of the forest. You know, where we always meet.
Okay, nice.
We made plans to avoid all the Halloween trick-or-treat kids and their bullshit excuse of Halloween decorations. We agreed on getting beer and meeting up at the entrance of the woods. Next day comes, and it's Halloween. It's also a Saturday, and the skies were clear for once. My rich friend Chris's dad is having a Halloween party, and his job is to steal his dad's beer. As the uneventful day goes by, it's now 9 p.m. And from what Chris told me, was that his dad's friends were all loud and buzzed pretty early from shots and other drinks. So, they didn't even notice him stealing 2 packs of beer bottles.
They didn't even notice me. Kind of pathetic if you ask me.
Nice! Jorge and I are at the woods entrance. Ryan and I were just waiting until we got a text from Chris saying that someone was following him.
Dude, I'm getting weirded out. Some fucking kid is just staring in my direction.
Should we scare him off?
No, he's wearing that Michael Myers costume and his knife gave off this shiny glow, so I think he has a weapon. Once I make this turn, I'm gonna make a run for it.
Dude, we can come find you.
Dude, message us back. Okay, we are going to find you. Just run towards the road.
I didn't get a response back from Chris, and we heard something move in the woods behind us. We were nervous, but we stayed quiet. After 30 seconds, Chris emerged from the woods, scaring us. Chris laughs. Ryan and I pretty much told Chris where he can shove it, but admittedly, we all thought it was a good prank. We continued to walk down the path and we started to open the beer bottles. We were all in our 15, 16 age, and let me tell you, it was the most disgusting bottle I've ever tasted. I'm much older now, but I didn't understand back then how people can drink it. Anyways, Chris continued drinking as it was his family's favorite. We found our favorite hangout spot, and there was our used campfire pit and tree logs for chairs. This site has been here for years, and other local kids enjoy coming here to hide from parents. After talking about how Chris really dislikes his parents from neglecting him from work and friends, Ryan thought of an idea that was better than just an empty fire pit. Yo, I just remembered. There's this supposed haunted cabin near here. If we walk down this old path, we can be there in like 10 minutes.
Nah, I'm good. Plus, you were saying some kid was following you, so that kind of messed up my horror mood.
Oh, come on, Jorge. It'll make me feel a lot better if you come.
Freaking hate you both. Fine. We can go, but I'm leaving if anything shady happens.
Ryan took lead for us. After walking at the distance that Ryan said before, we see it. It was a cabin all by itself in the woods. It's what you would normally see during a pilgrimage. Ryan told us that he and his brother used to go inside there, and it still has some broken furniture and a small basement. We got closer, and for a moment, Ryan stopped walking. We questioned him, and he pointed out the window. After looking at the direction where Ryan's finger was pointing, we see it. It was a small light, like from a small flame. The luminous light flickers like a candle. I said quietly, "I think there's someone in there." Ryan and I suggested leaving, but Chris said that he could take a peek at the window. So, we all took a look inside, and what we saw was not what we expected. We saw two gothic girls looking at a book and playing on a Ouija board. Our worries were slightly going away because we all knew these two girls. They live in the same neighborhood as us, and we take the same bus to school. We didn't really talk to them, but our relationship is okay to say the least. Ryan knocked on the window, and the girls quickly turned their heads. We didn't hide, and they saw us. They were startled at first, but they quickly recognized us, and one of the girls opened the front door. The two girls were named Ashley and Cam. Chris always had a crush on Ashley, so right away, he told them what we were doing. I didn't mind it. It was just out of character for Chris to behave like this around a girl. Cam invited us all in, and they both admit what they were trying to do. They were trying to contact the spirits in the cabin. They told us that so far, they didn't get any response, but the girls asked us if we'd like to join. Chris of course said yes, but Ryan and I didn't like Ouija boards, but we stayed, but kept our distance. They lit more candles, and laid them out to make a circle. Chris, Ashley, and Cam placed their hands on the planchette and started humming and asking questions.
Is there anyone here? Show yourself.
Give us a sign if you're here with us.
Wow, this is scary and cool. Are we alone?
Suddenly, the planchette started to move to the word no. The cliche questions started to move around.
I swear I didn't move it. Was it you?
I know you didn't.
It wasn't me, so I think we made contact.
Ryan and I gave each other a weird side glance. As the group continued their demonic questions, I noticed something at the window. It was a quick motion, like what everyone sees when they see a shadow moving from their peripheral vision. But I was certain this wasn't the case. I asked Ryan to come check out the window with me, and at that moment, we didn't see anything. As we were looking at the window, the girls asked the Ouija board, and this was the moment where I started to pay attention.
Are you here to hurt us?
The planchette moves. Ryan and I looked as well. The planchette moves slowly, and our hearts started to beat fast. With a long anticipation, the planchette moves over the word no. We all gave a sigh of relief, but the planchette moved again on its own and spelled O-U-T-S-I-D-E. Outside. The Ouija board group were confused, but Ryan and I gave a worried look at each other. I turned around, and I just saw some person wearing a Michael Myers outfit. Ryan and I screamed. We backed up and the others focused on what we were looking at. Chris shouted,
"That's the fucking kid that was following me earlier!"
Ryan and I realized that Chris wasn't joking, so we shouted at the thin window loudly.
You got us. Is it okay if you just leave? You're scaring our friends and we're about to leave.
Michael Myers, or whatever this kid's name is, just stared at us. We were all confused and weirded out. And Ryan shouts in aggression. Okay, dude, you're starting to weird us out. If you don't leave, we will kick your fucking ass. Now piss off! Michael Myers wasn't fazed until he lifted his hand and showed us a knife. The girls got nervous, but Ryan was quick to say, Yo, what the? The knife is real! Ashley got up and tried to leave the back door, but the door wasn't opening. I quickly joined and tried to push the sudden stuck door. Chris looked out the window and noticed something and said,
There's a chair against the door. The fucker's either trying to scare us or he's actually gonna do something.
Everyone was at the door trying to break it with their feet and shoulders, but suddenly, we all heard a window shatter. Michael is trying to enter the cabin. Cam got scared, so she ran downstairs in the dark basement. Ashley screamed at Cam to come back, but Ashley followed downstairs as well. Not surprised, Chris followed too, so of course, Ryan and I had to join in. There wasn't a light switch, so we all walked in the empty concrete basement. I couldn't see anything, but I looked around and felt something large, cube, and metallic. It felt like a washer or dryer. So I right away whispered to someone to grab a weapon. Voices from all directions was all I heard. Loud shuffling footsteps. Ryan told everyone to stop moving so much. Suddenly, heard loud footsteps walking down the wooden stairs. Each step sounded like work heavy boots. Michael Myers reached at the bottom of the stairs. We can only see him because the window from upstairs is shining the moonlight perfectly on him. He's just standing there with that fucking mask and knife in his right hand. It was just pure silence. I could hear Michael breathing, like he's enjoying all of this. Cam couldn't control herself, so she started to cry with heavy breathing. Michael turned his head fast like a spider and lifted his knife near his head, just like in the movies, and walked at a fast pace towards Cam. The girls screamed, and I saw Chris through the moonlight with an iron pan hitting Michael in the head. We all heard a teenager screaming from the Michael Myers costume, and heard the metallic knife falling on the concrete floor. And so did the mysterious person. We all didn't hesitate, and just ran upstairs. Chris was the last to go up, but before he did, he threw the pan, and the kid was making that screaming again from the impact. The girls were picking up the book and Ouija board, and Chris said just leave the candles behind. I remember all of us running through the moonlight woods and trying to get to the main road. After the woods punished us with cuts, scrapes, and hard falls, we finally made it to the road. We all breathed in exhaustion. After recovering, I told everyone to just return back home. Ryan and I were kind of neighbors, so we stuck together while Chris volunteered to take the girls home. After 20 long minutes of walking, I made it home. Then I sent everyone a wellness check-in. Everyone texted back saying that they were okay. After laying on my bed, with a sigh of relief, I finally slept. I woke up in the next morning with a text from Chris.
Dude, my dad said he found the fucking candles in my front door.
What the fuck? This kid is relentless. Did he get a chance to know who it is?
No, but his voice sounded familiar. It sounded like those 8th graders.
Nothing else happened that night. Chris is still watching his back after the candle incident, but is now dating Ashley. Cam and Ryan became good friends, but I'm just the 5th wheel in the group now. But we're all still friends to this day. We hang out every other weekend and always bring up this night. There's still a part of me wondering who the hell that dude was in the Michael Myers costume. I guess we will never know.
My friend has always bragged that he was highly skilled at lucid dreaming. So when he stood teetering on the cliff ledge and calmly assured me that he knew this was all a dream, none of my desperate pleas could convince him not to jump.
I don't celebrate Halloween anymore. Story by u/Born Beach.
Narrated by Miss Creepytales.
Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. What a time of year, ain't it? I still remember my first Halloween. My first real Halloween, mind you. Not the manufactured bullshit that they shovel down our throats year after year. I'm talking about All Hallows Eve. I'm talking about Samhain. I'm talking about the one night of the year when monsters walk the earth. I was 11 years young when I first experienced the horror of Halloween. I'd been out with a friend, roaming the streets with bags full of wrappers and stomachs full of candy. We'd been out looking for some fun, some excitement. See, once you reach a certain age, plain old trick-or-treating doesn't really do it anymore. No, you need something special, something terrifying. I think that's why we took a stroll down Blackbriar Lane. And I think that's why we went looking for the decrepit one in all his wicked glory. And I think that's why I watched somebody die. But am I getting ahead of myself, aren't I? Yes, I suppose that I am. So let's rewind, backtrack, allow me to set the scene. It's October 31st and the night air is crisp. The leaves are red and gold and the neighborhood is lit up in jack-o'-lanterns and full moons. There's mischief in the air. There's murder. Earlier that week, a kid dies. They find his body floating down the river like he's out for a swim. Except, he's fully dressed and missing his head. You ever try to identify a body without a head? Without teeth? Well, apparently it's easy. See, little Greggy Hall had a nice mom, the sort that most of us can only dream of having. And the lovely lady went ahead and stitched his name right onto the side of his jacket. And just like that, we knew who was dead. Open and shut, case closed. But what was he doing dead, without his head, floating down the river, when he should have been in bed? Was it a prank gone wrong? Maybe the poor kid slipped walking across the trestle. Or maybe, just maybe, somebody sick and twisted was out for blood, and the innocent little Greggy was too good a target to pass up. Who could say? Truth is, nobody had a clue. Not the sheriff, not his mother, not a single soul in town could have told you how little Greggy came to find himself so waterlogged and pale. But here's the thing about secrets. None of them last forever. This one didn't even last a week. It was me and Andy who figured it out late on Halloween night. We took the turn down Blackbriar Lane because that was the way you made it into Shelton Wood, and that was the place they'd found Greggy Hall's decapitated corpse. And before I go any further, I want you to know that I don't mean Greggy any disrespect. He was a good kid, a kind kid. But that night though, in the heart of October, he had become so much more than that. He'd become a legend, a ghost story come to life. That night, Greggy Hall became the reason that I don't celebrate Halloween. And that night, I crossed Blackbriar Bridge with Andy Delton, and together, the two of us walked into Shelton Wood. The trees there are like nowhere else. They're thick, almost so thick that they press in on each other like blades of grass, smothering for space. And once you step beneath the Shelton canopy, it really doesn't matter if the moon is crescent or full as the sun, you're not going to see a damn thing. It's dark in there, desperately so. We used our flashlights to navigate, doing our best not to tear our costumes on their branches as we passed by. My mother had spent all month sewing my Dracula outfit, and Andy had saved up half a year's allowance for his Spider-Man getup. We weren't about to walk out of there full of rips and holes. No way! But we had work to do. See, Andy and I knew something about Shelton that not the sheriff or Gregory's mother or even the pastor knew. We knew that Gregory Hall had been talking about hearing voices in the woods on the way home from school. We knew he'd said he saw something watching him from the trees. We knew all of this because his sister, Sally, was in our grade, and she'd told us about how religious their mother was, how fanatical. She told us her mother once convinced the pastor to drag Sally into the woods and then perform an exorcism on her. She told us she thought her mother's paranoia was starting to wear off on poor little Greggy. So when Greggy started talking about hearing voices, seeing things, we thought it was just nonsense, make-believe. After all, he wasn't describing seeing a man, woman, or animal in the trees. He was describing something, a monster. He was describing seeing a nightmare come to life, and even out here, in this little slice of nowhere on the edge of the map, we knew that monsters weren't real. Or, we thought we did. But then pop goes little Greggy's head, and the next thing you know, we are fast believers. So fast, in fact, that we brought the news straight to the police. Guess what happened then? They chucked our statements into a drawer and told us that they'd looked into it. At first the damn pastor wants to ban access to Shelton Wood, and now the kids are saying it's haunted. We heard them laughing all the way up until the door closed behind us. The town is full of nut jobs. No, it was up to us. We thought about inviting Greggy's sister along, but we knew she wanted time alone, time to mourn her brother, and that was fine by us. This whole thing, this little investigation of ours, was just a scouting mission anyway. We weren't expecting to encounter the creature that stalked Gregory Hall from the trees. We weren't expecting to fight for our lives. But then, these things so rarely go according to plan. We spent an hour roaming Shelton before we realized that we were lost. We'd been trying to follow the river, but at one point, Andy swore he heard muttering coming from over the hill. And so the two of us clambered up it to investigate, and all we found there were old pine trees and empty dark. We turned around to circle back, but the river was gone. It vanished. We did our best to retrace our steps. We even followed our noses, hoping we could smell the stink of the town sewage that ran into the river. But it was no use. The river was lost, and so were we. We walked for 10, maybe 15 minutes before the sounds of the forest died, the shifting of branches, the pitter-patter of rodents darting across the dirt, the buzz of mosquitoes, and even the trill of crickets, all turned to silence. It was like somebody had hit the switch on a stereo. Instant quiet. Andy and I stopped to listen, to observe, and we saw something shift in the trees. A large figure, maybe twice the size of a man, with round white eyes and a long, twisting neck, was perched above us on a thick branch. It clicked at us. At first, we thought it was speaking, trying to communicate. But then we realized the clicking wasn't coming from its face. It was coming from its hands. Its fingers, long and crooked, seemed to splinter into separate appendages. On either one of its hands were fans of hundreds of fingers, each gripping the tree branch, while their nails picked away at the bark beneath. That picking was making the clicking sounds its fingers were. Andy tried to speak to it. He tried to ask what it was doing here, to ask whether or not it was the thing that had killed poor little Greggy Hall. As though there were any doubt in our minds. But at that moment, the monster's fingers gripped the branch with such force that the entire thing snapped in two. The creature began plummeting to the earth like a giant, and I thought maybe our work would be done and gravity would put an end to it. But it let loose a shrill shriek and flapped its many-fingered hands like wings and pressed itself up into the air. It shrieked again, and its eyes, once wide and round, became an acid painting of colors, horrible and bright and anguishing. There weren't any reds or purples or greens. There were only the colors of blood, of bruises, of bile. It screeched again and then swooped towards us. My heart thundered as I threw myself to the ground. But the thing is, whatever it was, caught Andy in its grip. It caught him by his head in 2 feet that resembled human jaws more than anything else. They were covered in white teeth, and it was at that moment that I knew I would never see my friend again. And I think he knew too. Andy shook and hollered. He screamed and shouted. But all of it was only for the span of 6 seconds, because not a moment later, the thing clenched its jaws, its feet, and Andy's head split open like a jack-o'-lantern, his insides splattering me like a water balloon. I had to go. I turned, running full tilt from this thing. I didn't know where I was running. I didn't even know if I could reasonably run anywhere that this monster couldn't reach me. But I knew that I had to try. I had to. Because if I didn't then, I would end up just like Andy. Just like Greggy. And as my feet pounded the earth, my heart pounded my chest, and I ripped off my Dracula cloak, terrified of it tripping me up on an errant rock, and I doubled over as my lungs burned. I've never run so hard in my life, never so fast. And it wasn't enough. Not even close. With a beat of its finger wings, the beast crashed down in front of me. It towered above me, standing over 9 feet tall with its terrible technicolor eyes swirling like promises of violence. "Looking for me?" It uttered, in such a low, broken voice that I almost missed it. "You killed Greggy," I said. It seemed a stupid, obvious thing to say after watching my best friend's head crack open like an egg yolk, but it was all I could manage. And at that moment, I was so shocked, so traumatized, that I reverted to our hypothesis, our mission. "Yes," the thing said. It rose up and now I could see it clearer. Beneath the faint scraps of moonlight that pierced the veil of leaves, I bore witness to a monster with saucer-shaped eyes, a set of long arms ending in legions of decrepit fingers, and 2 legs that each hosted a mouth where there should have been feet. It stepped toward me, walking on its teeth. "Who are you?" I asked, swallowing. "Are you him? The decrepit one?" It took a breath, a long, harsh breath that sounded like it might have gurgled razor blades in its lungs. And when it spoke, it breathed cold air onto me. I am you. It took another tooth-filled step, and I staggered backwards. My world spun, but I wasn't sure if that was because of my fear, or my grief at losing Andy, or the awful kaleidoscope of horror playing out in its swirling eyes. What does that mean? It didn't respond. It reached a hand out toward me, and its eyes rolled faster and faster, like a blender of madness, and its teeth snapping as it took its next steps. "Pelere!" shouted a voice. The monster recoiled, its long neck twisted like a snake as its eyes blinked and faded like a television reception, dying in the storm. It curled into a ball, wrapping itself with its hundreds of fingers before disappearing into a gust of dead leaves. I took a breath. Above, the moon seemed to glow a little brighter, and beside me, the sound of the river returned. Crickets filled the night, and the wind whistled in my ears. It was as though the world had come back into focus and that I'd been pulled out of a dream, all because of... "Hello?" I said, wheeling about. There'd been a voice, a loud one, that was commanding and full of authority in speaking a language that I didn't understand. But where was... Oh, there he was, down by the river. "You all right, son?" the pastor asked. I shook my head and said, "No, my friend's dead, and..." "Yes, I see what's left of him on your shirt." The pastor paused, looking me over. "What made you go looking for that creature?" "It killed Gregory Hall," I sputtered. "We wanted proof." "No such thing. Not when it comes to the decrepit one. It's closer to a thought than a being of flesh and blood. You can't take pictures of it, can't record audio. Believe me, I've tried. It feeds off of fear. It feeds off of people like your friend, like you, who go looking for nightmares in all the right places. If it gets stronger enough, we lose." He must have registered the confusion on my face. "By which I mean that we die. This town, you and me, your mother and father and sisters and brothers, all of us will fall into its deadly reverie. And poof, off goes our heads." "How do we stop it?" "We don't. Or at least you don't. I do. I brought it here after all. So it only makes sense that I should be the one to risk getting rid of it." "You brought it here?" "Yes. When I performed the exorcism on Sally Hall, it had been living in her, see? Hiding. Her mother noticed it, bless her heart, and she requested that I remove the being from her daughter. But it was powerful. Too powerful for me to destroy, and so instead, I had to compromise, think quickly. I swallowed, the pieces beginning to line up in my head. You had to chain it here, didn't you? To this forest?" The pastor nodded and said, "It was all that I could do." He sighed, put an arm around my shoulders and told me that he would walk me home. He explained that after what happened to Gregory, he had been petitioning the mayor to block access to Shelton Wood out of respect, to have it marked as a burial ground, a memorial. He told me that there had been some pushback at that time. Folks didn't want to sacrifice a slice of forest for a single dead kid. But now that the same fate had befallen Andy, he counted on the mayor changing his tune. And by the next week, the mayor had. The section of Shelton was closed off to everybody but investigators. And soon enough, even they quit coming through. It became a dead zone, a piece of the map that didn't exist anymore. Far as anybody was concerned, the simple fact was there were too many bad memories, too many reminders of the horror that had taken place there. It's been years now, and I no longer celebrate Halloween. I can't. It reminds me of Andy, of little Greggy, and of the decrepit one with all its fingers. For a while there, I thought I'd actually moved past all of this, left it behind me. But then tonight, I saw something from my window that sent my blood cold. Amidst the shifting clouds of the black Halloween sky, framed in the light of the moon, was a large bird. A bird with 1,000 fingers on either hand and feet lined with teeth. A bird flying away from Shelton Wood. A bird flying to town.
Every morning I would see the scarecrow in a new position. It wasn't until they started finding torn patches of burlap at grisly murder scenes that I started to get worried. And with that, darlings, we're at the end of our Halloween week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll let 242 finish this. Thank you so much, 42, for finally letting me free. I want to thank everyone who let us read their stories this week, and all the narrators who lent their voices to bring these stories to life. Without you guys, this Halloween week would have fell flat, I think. Thank you guys so much. And for today's video, I'd like to thank PA Nightmares, As the Raven Dreams, Lay Spookaria, Phoenix Fire, Silver Underworld and his guests, and Miss Creepy Tales for lending your voices and your stories for this amazing finale. And thank you, Limited Stories, for lending your voice for mine to bring Sam to life. You did a really good job, dude. But of course, now if you enjoyed these stories, hit the like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. If you'd like to help this channel/podcast, please just share these stories to anyone who might enjoy them. And if you'd like to help in other ways, I do have Patreon, merch, PayPal, and YouTube memberships are up and running. Last but never least, I would love a comment. Tell me what you thought of these stories of this week. Tell me what you'd like me to change. Give me info of what you like so I can do a better job next year. But of course, happy Halloween, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for Halloween week. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.